So we're going to have a quick tutorial on breathing and trying to find a more efficient breathing cycle. Really good thing to start doing, kind of, especially if you've just had a baby and it's those early days postpartum. It's really nice to begin getting your breathing cycle back, because obviously in these early days we can't be doing a lot of exercise. So start just laying a good foundation for exercise by beginning to get your posture and your breathing back into a little bit more of a natural alignment. One thing to say is if you've got a lot of stitches, particularly if they're abdominal stitches, obviously just listen to your body. So if you're doing deep inhales, you might find that that's a little bit stressful on that area. So if you feel a lot of pulling or tugging in that area, then obviously just ease back a little bit, or get advice from local physio or your GP. But for most people, obviously we need to breathe through the day. So beginning with your breathing is a really good place to start, because it's absolutely fine for most people to get going with this right away. So there's a few props you might want to use to help you with feeling for it. So one of them is a resistance band, just so you've got something to feel for around your rib cage. I like to use the hands actually, but for some people they might find this easier. And then the other is either a bean bag or a book or something very light, but reasonably wide. This is probably slightly bigger than is necessary, but gives you a bit of an idea. So I've just borrowed my daughter's Chuffa Chuffa Choo Choo book, and I'm going to use that for this demo. Now what these props are going to do, they're going to give you a little bit more feeling of the correct places to open and to narrow in the breathing cycle. So we have a few components of the breathing cycle that we're really concerned with in this particular exercise. The one is we've got the diaphragm, which is our dome-shaped muscle, very important for breathing. It's also a big stabilizer for the upper body, but obviously its first and primary role should be breathing. Its secondary role, once we're efficient breathers, is that it's going to help you to keep the body stable when you do overhead movements or upper body movements. Now the second muscle is the transverse abdominis, which is this corset that goes around your waist, starts at your spine, and which is why it's a big spinal stabilizer. It attaches to your rib cage and to your pelvis, so it helps with stability in those areas. And it has a big role in controlling the pressure in your abdomen. So when you feel that kind of belly pushing up feeling, when you're doing everyday activities, that sometimes means that your transverse abdominis is lacking some tone and its activation when you need it. So breathing correctly will begin that process of helping you to find that again. And then the last one that we're going to talk about in this cycle is your pelvic floor. So pelvic floor is a big component of the breathing cycle. It's also obviously important for continence and for pelvis stability. It's involved in your hip function as well. Lots and lots of things that the pelvic floor does, but it has a foundational role in breathing cycle. So when we breathe in, what we want to have is a relaxed tummy and a relaxed pelvic floor. On an inhale, these areas should get a little bit of opening and stretch. And the rib cage itself should open wider, and it should also open a little bit front and back. Now the thing I tend to see more often is that people struggle with this widening. They tend to be quite good at opening to the front, but because they're not widening, they have to kind of pull up into their chest, and they get very tight through their neck and shoulder muscles as a result, and they also don't really get much involvement then, because they didn't breathe in correctly. They then don't get much involvement on the exhale from their pelvic floor and their transverse abdominis. So what we do want to try and improve the ability to open wide and to feel that opening in all directions through your torso. Now the exhale, this is where I see a lot of inefficiency. A lot of people are breathing out from very high in the chest, or they really squeeze their upper abs to send the breath out, but they don't really get so involved down here. And again, you will feel this sometimes in your breath cycle, that when you breathe out, that there's almost like a pushing up of your lower belly and a tightening and a squeezing of your upper belly, or that you just don't get anything happen down here and everything's moving up and down in your chest. We want to change that pattern and get you breathing out much more efficiently. Our breath out should be coming from the lower abdominal area and pelvic floor. So when we breathe out, we want to be sending that air back from this lower area. Okay, and again, this is where our book or our beanbag comes in, or you can also use the flat of a hand. We're going to have something to feel for in this area. So What I would do is, first of all, if you're going to use your band, is just tie it around, and so that you can make sure it's nice and wide, so that it's around the lower rib cage, but also you can feel it around the upper part of your abdomen. And you want to just tie that snugly enough that when you breathe in, you'll be able to feel it kind of stretching to the sides. Okay, now if you're not using a band, or if you just find it easier doing it this way, you can just put your hands on the sides of your body. And here, can you see I've got my hands going down the whole side of the body, so from the lower rib cage down the whole side of the torso. Now, if you're really struggling with this, I would recommend doing that, because then you get additional feedback between your brain and this area, because of your palm of your hand is feeling it. We know that your palm of your hand is probably going to have good sensation. It's not going to have been disrupted so much by pregnancy, unless you've got carpal tunnel or something like that. But it's going to give you a bit more feeling. So if you struggle with this, put your hands here so that you can feel that opening to the sides through your hands, okay? Now, the book is going to go on the lower abdomen, so kind of resting, depending on how big it is, it needs to be able to span, so you can almost feel it at the front of the pelvis, but it wants to be at least below the navel or over the navel. If it's a big book, then obviously rest it over the whole abdomen, and if it's very small, then place it below the navel. Then you're going to lie down on your back. Try and, if you're comfortable lying on your back without a pillow, then do, but if your head is tipping back at all, then make sure you've got a pillow so that you've got a nice long neck. It will feel like your chin is in a nice neutral position. It's not tilting towards the sky. And then we're going to place our book on the lower abdomen. Check in with your alignment. So ribcage should feel heavy to the ground, and the pelvis should feel heavy to the ground. If you're still quite flared in your rib cage, you might be finding that your ribs are sticking up like this. So if you're able to draw them down, then do, but don't force them down. Just get as close as you can comfortably. And with these long exhales that we're going to do in this exercise, you should find that your ribs actually come lower and lower, and then you suddenly find that you can actually lie quite comfortably on the ground. So first of all, we're going to think about our breath coming in, and we're going to be sending that breath into the sides of the body. So again, for the first few breaths, I just want you to stick with me and just have your hands on the side of your body. You've also got your band here on your rib cage. Now I want you to send that breath, and I want you to send it as though you wanted to open the palms of your hand to the side. So breathe in through your nose, opening the hands to the side. And then just pause, and at that pause I want you to just introspect, and you'll feel how the body opened to the side. So we've got an opening and expansion through your abdominal wall. Obviously if you need to breathe out, then go ahead, but it's even in all directions, okay? So breathe it, and then now when we come around to our exhale, what I want you to do is to feel for that book, or it might be your hand, that's fine. You might move your hands from here to here, and I want you to imagine that you're drawing that surface, the whole thing, directly back towards the floor, okay? And what you'll feel there is that naturally your pelvic floor gets just a little bit involved, and there's a tightening of the abdominal wall underneath your book or your hand. It feels like there's like a kind of a firming and also a connection. Everything's kind of drawing inwards, okay? But we're not pulling it. We're just kind of using this object as a bit of a guide of where to send the breath back from. And we're going to make that breath out very long. So let's come around and do that breath cycle again. So we're going to breathe in for half the amount of time that we breathe out. So for this video, I'm going to breathe in for a count of 3 and out for a count of 6, okay? So we're going to breathe in wide into the torso, feeling the hand and the band go wide, soft belly, soft pelvic floor. Now we're going to breathe out, drawing that book towards the floor, feeling the natural participation of the pelvic floor and the abdominal wall, sending the air up and out of your body. Breathing in wide into the torso, letting the air come in through your nose, and out, feeling that book draw back towards the floor. In, breathing in through the nose, and out. Breathing out through the nose, feeling the book go back towards the floor. Now, if you find that when you're doing that breath cycle, when you breathe out, there's just nothing happening in your abdominal muscles on its own, then sometimes then you do need to put a little bit more voluntary recruitment into it, in which case you would almost just feel like you're pulling a little bit into that book. But keep it soft and gentle. Only use the amount of recruitment that you actually need to encourage that breath back. Don't grip and really tense too hard, because what we don't want to do is to train the nervous system to over recruit these muscles. We want this muscle to be able to always dynamically respond to the task at hand, and breathing is quite a low level demand on it, so it should only be a very gentle recruitment. It should just be enough that when you breathe out, the body goes flatter, as opposed to breathing out and feeling the lower abdomen push up. We want to feel it come in as you breathe out. So let's go through it again. So we're breathing in for a count of 3, out for a count of 6. In for a count of 3, feeling everything widen, soft belly, soft pelvic floor. And out for a count of 6, feeling everything come back towards the midline. Breathing out through your nose. Don't push the air through your lips at the moment. Just breathe out through your nose. Good. Now we're going to add a little pause at the end of each section. Again, just so you can have a moment to really check and correct and then send the air in the various different stages that we're at in the breath cycle. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 3. Pause. Out for a count of 6. Pause. In for a count of 3. Pause. Out for a count of 6. Pause. In for a count of 3. Pause. Out for a count of 6. Pause. In for a count of 3. Pause. Out for a count of 6. Pause. Okay, and at all points in this particular exercise, we're just breathing in and out through the nose. Or if you have got like nasal constriction, or there's a reason why you cannot breathe through your nose, then just go with a soft mouth exhale. At this moment in time, what I don't want you to do in this exercise is put the lips together and blow. You might find yourself doing that automatically. Just try and train yourself out of that for this particular exercise. When we're breathing at rest, we shouldn't have to be blowing through pursed lips. We do use that technique tactically in exercise, again, to try and build a bit of density back into the abdominal wall. But for this particular exercise, all I'm just trying to do is help you get in connected with the relaxed breathing cycle. For looking at using the pursed lip exhale as a way to kind of create a little bit more strength and conditioning for the abdominal wall, that's another video. This one, and especially if you're newly postpartum, just work with that relaxed breath cycle, just getting in control of being able to breathe out and feel everything come back in, and as you breathe in, everything being able to expand and open wide. We want to move away from any tendency to think of breathing in as this or this, where the belly all goes to the front. So when you hear the term belly breath, they don't mean breathe only into your belly, they mean breathe wide into your torso. Your belly will naturally expand in each direction. It's even, front, back and sides. It's not all here. If we're only breathing here to the front, we're not getting much expansion through the diaphragm, so we're not training that essential component of the inner core. And also it's putting a lot of stress on those healing abdominal wall tissues. So again, for things like diastasis and just that early postpartum healing, when we're trying to get a little bit of tone back to the abdominal wall, we want the skin to be able to kind of begin to find its way back to a bit more thickness and less of that kind of stretchiness. We call it compliance, where it's very sort of loose and stretchy. If you're always breathing only up in the front, then it's going to really contribute to that persisting. So try and get that breath right early on, and it's going to serve you well for the next stage of your journey in rehabilitating your body, which is to then work on exercises to kind of strength, tone and condition the inner core. And you know, obviously that if you're newly postpartum, then that's not quite yet, but if you're getting towards that like 5 or 6 week mark and you're starting to begin to think about like, I'd like to go back to Pilates or yoga, then you know, you're closer to that. Getting this breath right now is going to really serve you well when you go to that. And if you're years down the line, still worth doing, because again, if you can get your breath right, then you're going to have a much better connection to your core, which means that any other exercise is going to be more efficient and more effective. So certainly worth doing. I hope this helps.